Imagine arresting someone you think is beneath you, only to realize they hold your fate in their hands. This is the jaw-dropping story of two racist cops who wrongfully arrested a black man, only to find out he was the judge assigned to their case. The twist will leave you speechless. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. On a chilly Thursday night in Atlanta, Judge Malcolm Reed, a 45-year-old black man, was driving home in his modest sedan. Known for his integrity and dedication to justice, Judge Reed was well respected in the legal community, though he often downplayed his title outside the courtroom. As he approached a red light, Malcolm noticed flashing blue lights in his rearview mirror. Two officers, Sergeant Rick Dawson and Officer Tom Hendricks, pulled him over. Dawson approached the driver's side window, his posture aggressive. "License and registration," he barked, not bothering with a greeting. Malcolm complied calmly. "Is there a reason I'm being stopped, officer?" Hendricks sneered from the passenger side. "You were driving suspiciously slow. Got something to hide?" Without waiting for Malcolm's explanation, Dawson ordered him out of the car. "Step out. Now." Malcolm raised his hands, keeping his voice steady. "I'm cooperating, but I'd like to know the reason for this." Dawson smirked. "You'll know soon enough." Hendricks added, "People like you shouldn't ask questions. Just do as you're told." Malcolm's jaw tightened, but he said nothing as he stepped out of the vehicle. The officers patted Malcolm down and searched his car without a warrant. Finding nothing, Dawson grew frustrated. "You're under arrest for resisting an officer," he said, slapping cuffs on Malcolm's wrists. Malcolm remained calm. "Resisting? I haven't done anything." "Tell it to the judge," Hendricks snapped, laughing. As they drove him to the station, the officers exchanged smug remarks about teaching a lesson. At the station, Malcolm was booked and placed in a holding cell. He observed the chaos around him with a quiet composure that unnerved the officers. "Why's he so calm?" Hendricks muttered to Dawson. "Doesn't matter," Dawson replied. "Let him rot for the night." The following morning, Malcolm's attorney arrived to secure his release. As Malcolm walked out of the station, he turned to the officers, his gaze steady. "Gentlemen, I'll be seeing you soon." Dawson chuckled. "Yeah, right." Days later, Dawson and Hendricks were called into court for a hearing regarding complaints filed against them for misconduct during the arrest. When the judge entered the courtroom, the officers' smirks vanished. It was Malcolm Reed, the very man they had arrested. "Good morning, gentlemen," Judge Reed said, his voice calm but firm. "Let's get started." The courtroom fell silent as the officers exchanged panicked glances. Hendricks leaned toward Dawson. "Is this a joke? How is he the judge?" Judge Reed looked directly at them. "Do you have something to say, Officer Hendricks?" "And no, Your Honor," Hendricks stammered. Judge Reed reviewed the case file with a neutral expression. "This hearing concerns allegations of misconduct, including racial profiling and abuse of authority. Officers, you are entitled to representation. Do you have counsel present?" The officers nodded nervously. Their attorney stood but looked visibly uncomfortable, clearly aware of the irony of the situation. Judge Reed cleared his throat, commanding the courtroom's attention. "Officers Dawson and Hendricks, the charges against you include racial profiling, unlawful arrest, and abuse of power." The officers shifted uncomfortably as Reed continued. "Before proceeding, let me remind you that this courtroom operates under principles of fairness and justice. You will have the opportunity to defend yourselves, but evidence will speak louder than words." The prosecutor presented the dashcam footage, which revealed the officers pulling over Malcolm without probable cause. The video showed Dawson's aggressive tone and Hendricks's dismissive comments. The prosecutor paused the video and addressed the court. This footage clearly shows that Judge Reed was cooperative and compliant, contradicting the officer's claim of resisting arrest. The courtroom murmured as the evidence became irrefutable. Next, the prosecutor called a witness, a bystander who had recorded part of the arrest on their phone. "I was parked nearby and saw the whole thing," the witness said. "The man didn't do anything wrong. The officers seemed to target him for no reason." Hendricks whispered to Dawson, "We're screwed." When it was Dawson's turn to testify, he tried to justify his actions. We were following protocol, he claimed. The defendant, Judge Reed, was acting suspiciously. Judge Reed raised an eyebrow. Suspiciously, Sergeant Dawson? Please elaborate. Dawson hesitated, knowing his answer would only dig the hole deeper. He was driving slowly. The courtroom erupted in whispers, and Judge Reed's expression remained calm but pointed. Driving slowly is not a crime, Sergeant. Hendricks was less composed on the stand. Under cross-examination, he admitted to using derogatory language during the arrest. I didn't mean anything by it, he stammered. It was just the heat of the moment. The prosecutor pressed further. So, you're admitting that your comments were inappropriate? Hendricks glanced at Reed, his face pale. Yes, I am. As the testimonies concluded, Judge Reed addressed the courtroom. His tone was calm, but every word carried weight. This case is not just about me. It's about a pattern of behavior that undermines public trust in law enforcement. Officers are entrusted with great responsibility, but that power must be exercised with integrity and respect for all citizens. He turned to the officers. Your actions were not only unprofessional but also unjust. They reflect poorly on the badge you wear and the oath you swore to uphold. After a brief recess, Judge Reed returned to the bench. Having reviewed the evidence and testimonies, it's clear that Officers Dawson and Hendricks violated their duties. You will face disciplinary action, and your conduct will be referred to the Internal Affairs Division for further investigation. The officers slumped in their seats, their careers hanging by a thread. Before dismissing the court, Judge Reed left the officers, and everyone present, with a powerful statement. Justice is not a privilege, it is a right. And it is my duty to ensure that no one, regardless of their background, is denied that right. Let this case serve as a reminder that no one is above accountability. The courtroom erupted in applause, a rare but heartfelt moment of unity. With the case against Dawson and Hendricks resolved, Judge Malcolm Reed wasn't finished. What he did next would spark citywide reform and force a reckoning within the police department. As the courtroom emptied, Dawson and Hendricks sat frozen in their seats, their reputations in tatters. I didn't think it'd end like this, Dawson muttered. It's not over yet, Hendricks replied bitterly, glancing toward Judge Reed, who was speaking with the prosecutor. Meanwhile, Malcolm felt a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. The verdict was a step forward, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. The following morning, Malcolm met with his longtime friend and mentor, civil rights attorney Gloria Harris. You did well in that courtroom, Gloria said, sipping her coffee. But one case won't fix a broken system. Malcolm nodded. I know. That's why I want to push for broader reforms. Mandatory bias training, stricter oversight, and better community engagement. Gloria raised an eyebrow. You're ready for the backlash that's coming? Malcolm's gaze hardened. I've faced worse. This is too important to ignore. As news of the trial spread, the police department faced intense scrutiny. Some officers supported the reforms Malcolm proposed, but others bristled at the changes. In a tense meeting, Police Chief Elena Morales addressed her team. We need to rebuild trust with our community. That starts with holding ourselves to a higher standard. Dawson, who had been temporarily suspended, scoffed. So, we're just supposed to bend over backward because one judge got offended? Chief Morales's voice sharpened. This isn't about one judge, it's about doing what's right. If you can't handle that, you don't belong here. Malcolm organized a town hall meeting to discuss his proposed reforms. The room was packed with residents eager to voice their concerns and ideas. A young man stood up and said, I've been stopped by the police more times than I can count, just because of the way I look. What's going to change that? Malcolm replied, accountability starts at the top. But real change requires all of us, police, judges, and citizens, to work together. That's why I'm here, and that's why your voice matters. The room erupted in applause. Despite the positive momentum, Malcolm began receiving anonymous threats. Letters arrived at his office with messages like, stay in your lane, judge, and you're making enemies you can't handle. Gloria urged him to increase his security, but Malcolm refused. If I let fear stop me, they've already won, he said. Meanwhile, Dawson and Hendricks met in secret. Bitter and humiliated, Dawson was determined to fight back. We can't let him destroy everything we've worked for, Dawson said. Hendricks hesitated. "But what can we do? He's untouchable." "Not if we find something to use against him," Dawson replied, a dangerous glint in his eye. One evening, as Malcolm walked to his car after a long day in court, a masked figure approached him from behind. "Judge Reed," the figure snarled, "you've gone too far." Before Malcolm could react, the figure swung a baton, but Malcolm ducked just in time. A security guard nearby intervened, scaring off the attacker. The incident made headlines, sparking outrage and calls for better protection of public officials. Rather than deterring him, the attack strengthened Malcolm's resolve. He appeared on a local news program, addressing both supporters and critics. "This isn't about me," Malcolm said. "This is about creating a system where justice is blind and fair for everyone. We can't let fear or hatred hold us back." The broadcast resonated across the city, inspiring marches, petitions, and community initiatives supporting reform. Late one evening, as Malcolm reviewed documents related to his proposed reforms, his phone buzzed. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but he answered anyway. "Judge Reed," the voice said, low and cold. Malcolm's chest tightened. "Who is this?" "It's someone who remembers the mistakes you'd rather forget," the voice replied. Before Malcolm could respond, the line went dead. The next morning, Malcolm found an envelope slipped under his office door. Inside was a grainy photograph of a younger Malcolm with his arm around a man he hadn't seen in years, Gerald Cross. Cross had been a close friend during law school, but their paths diverged sharply. While Malcolm pursued a career in law, Cross became embroiled in scandal and was convicted of fraud. The note attached read, "Clean hands. We'll see." Malcolm confided in Gloria, who immediately began investigating. "Gerald Cross," she said, scanning her laptop. "Looks like he's out on parole and trying to make a comeback as a political consultant. He must think he can use your past friendship to smear you." Malcolm shook his head. "We were friends, but I had no part in what he did. I have nothing to hide." "Then we'll handle this head-on," Gloria replied. Days later, an article appeared in a local tabloid, suggesting that Malcolm had been involved in Cross's fraudulent activities. The story went viral, with critics and supporters clashing online. In a press conference, Malcolm addressed the allegations directly. "I had no involvement in Gerald Cross's actions. My record speaks for itself, and I will not let baseless accusations distract from the important work we're doing." The firm response won over many, but the smear campaign continued. Meanwhile, Dawson, who had been following the controversy closely, saw an opportunity. He reached out to Cross, hoping to exploit the situation. "I've got connections," Dawson told Cross over a clandestine meeting. "We can make this story stick." Cross, sensing a chance for revenge, agreed. As Malcolm prepared for another town hall meeting, a surprising visitor arrived at his office, Gerald Cross himself. "What do you want, Gerald?" Malcolm asked, his tone cold. "I came to apologize," Cross said, his voice uncharacteristically sincere. "Dawson tried to use me to destroy you, but I couldn't go through with it." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Why the change of heart?" Cross sighed. "Because despite everything, you were the only one who believed in me back then. I won't ruin your life to save mine." With Cross's cooperation, Gloria and Malcolm exposed Dawson's scheme, presenting evidence of his attempts to fabricate stories and bribe witnesses. The revelation made headlines, and Dawson's remaining credibility crumbled. The police department dismissed him permanently, and Internal Affairs launched an investigation into his past cases. With the distractions behind him, Malcolm's reforms gained traction. The police department implemented mandatory bias training, an independent review board, and community policing initiatives. At a citywide rally, Malcolm addressed the crowd. "This journey hasn't been easy, but real change never is. Together, we've shown that justice isn't just an ideal, it's a commitment we make every day." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Malcolm felt a deep sense of fulfillment. In a quiet bar on the outskirts of town, Dawson sat alone, watching the rally coverage on TV. He downed his drink, his face a mix of bitterness and regret. Meanwhile, Malcolm stood on stage, surrounded by supporters. Despite the challenges, he knew the fight for justice was far from over, but he also knew he wasn't fighting alone. This story reminds us that justice requires courage, persistence, and the strength to confront our past. Judge Reed proved that even in the face of adversity, change is possible. What would you do to stand up for what's right? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it.